Okay, this week we're going to look at line as a visual component, and we're going to look at how the variations of line, and we're going to go into explaining what they mean and what they can mean for your image, and how you can use them to move your eye or move the viewer's eye throughout your image. All right, this week we're going to go over line. So week 5, line is what we're getting involved with, and line. This kind of line that I'm going to be talking about today is very different than the line characteristics that you put, the marks you put down. Okay, we have line as a visual component, and that's what we'll talk about today. And we have line as the actual mark you put down. Now, line as a mark you put down, that's the line that's one of our primaries of design. Line, as it's expressed as a visual component, is created in different ways. We create these lines. And lines like shape, like color, like space, rhythm, all of our 7 components, all of these things are can be measured and weighed against one another. And we create these different relationships. And they can be created all through the same measuring of major and minor key. So line, I'll go ahead and explain this part of line. It's a very different application of line than the type of line that we had previously discussed, as we determined that is our primaries. Now below, I created some examples of how we might see lines as a primary of design. Okay, so as we go down, one of the ways that we look at or define a line is when we have 2 intersecting planes. So 2 intersecting planes create a line. Now, there's implied lines and there's physical lines, okay? This one would be more of a physical line. It creates a line, okay, where these 2 planes merge. We also have an edge. An edge is created by 2 tonal values coming together. So you have, this is in a circle, but this is created, it looks like the outside contour, if it was a volume, but it's really just the shape. A line is created by 2 contrasting values. In this one, you could see the contrast between the gray circle and the white board, but also between the white board and the black background. That also creates a line, okay? So as 2 objects of differing value come together, they create the effect of a line, okay? So that's another type of line that occurs. Now, in this image, this has both, okay? So this has intersecting planes, and it also has tonal contrast, okay? So when we have intersecting planes and tonal contrast, we have 2 types of lines. Okay, so thinking about that, if I have this box up here like this, like we just looked at in the image, and we have a dark background, this is going to be a strong line. Right now, it's going to be the same because it's the same, it's white to the darkness of this pencil, all the way around evenly. But now that I have intersecting planes with this plane and the top plane and the side plane, the 2 side planes, the top plane and side plane over here, as they intersect, now I can look at it in terms of, right now it's just tonal contrast on the outside 6 angles, right? But if I say, like our photographic image, the darker side is here, okay? This is the highest contrasting. Now when two shapes of different values meet, they create another line here, right? So dark and light create a line, the idea of a line. Now this one over here is a little less contrasting, right? So we've got intersecting planes here to here, here to here, here to here, and those are our intersecting planes, right? And also here to here, ground to here, right? Then we have tonal contrast, okay? Now, if we look at the highest tonal contrast is right in here. So this is the highest tonal contrast between this and this, and it's also an intersection of planes. That makes this edge, or this line, it's both planes and tone, make it the dominant. Okay? So you can compound, you build on these things. Does that make sense? So here we have tonal contrast. Here we have tonal contrast. And we have this edge back here, right? But this edge back here, let's take a look at this. This edge back here, from light to dark, this one is tone. Okay? It's not intersecting planes. There's no intersecting planes there. It's just tone. This one is tone, and this one, same thing. This one is going to be tone, but no intersecting plane. So this is contrasting, this is contrasting. There, you'd say they're high contrast. But the fact that this is an intersecting plane, which creates a line, and it has tonal contrast, you can see in here dimensionally, this one appears to be the strongest angle in the whole box. So the appearance, we're getting the effect of this because we're getting like the two effects happening at the same time. We're getting tonal contrast and we're getting the sense of intersecting planes. Those two things add together create dominance. Optically, you could see the invert of that. But here's the interesting thing: is like, you know, when we look at something like this, and if this appears as the top plane, you know, look at the high contrast here, and why wouldn't that come forward? You know, the fact is these don't have intersecting planes. This one here has intersecting planes plus the tonal contrast. It's not as strong of contrast as this is, but it's contrast plus an intersecting plane. Here, it's tonal contrast and intersecting plane, but the tone difference is very minimal. And so it's subordinate to this one. So the question was, when people are drawing features or turning planes on forms, is that what they're thinking of? I don't know what's in somebody's head. I don't know what they're actually thinking. But the effect is just this. The effect is that if you are, let's just say you have a nose, right? And you have these planes that are kind of working like this. Right? And you have these different planes. So maybe a light source is coming across this way, and you're turning this plane, and it goes into a shadow. And this whole area will go into shadow. Okay, you might see a little bit more activity along this edge. And activity, I'm just saying it might appear a little bit darker in there, right? Along the edge. You might call that a core. You know, it might be explained as a core. Maybe you have something like this under here, the nostril under here. Right? And you get a little bit over in here like this. So if I kind of smooth this down and make this all kind of a shadow, Where you might tend to see a little bit more of an accent might be along this edge. You know, the appearance of that core on a sharper edge. Okay, if the cheek was coming around here, you know, maybe you've got something like this going into the shadow over here. It'd be softer. Okay, now if this is going into a different value over here, let's just say we've got this little different value. Sometimes the value of this cheek over here on this side would be actually a little bit lighter than this small form here. So this might be a little bit darker. Okay, this might just be a little bit darker because it reflects less light. Okay, it might appear just a little bit darker than, say, the cheek out here. And if you have a little highlight on there or something, maybe something like that, it'll let the highlight stand out. Okay, so what's going to happen is along this edge where you get this stronger turning plane, that's where you're going to really see a little bit more of the effect of both going from light into shadow like this, and also turning the form. And this being a little bit softer. You see, I've got actually stronger contrast. I'll put like a skin tone on here now, and I'll go back and I'll put this shadow shape on here. And the shadow is going along the contour of the face, right? But what ends up happening is this one is a little bit more accentuated. This one is just this to this, okay? It can even be fairly dark. This isn't turning a form. This is the edge of a shadow. Does that make sense? So this area here is tone. It's just like this area here, except it's a shadow laying over the same surface. So it's one surface, and it's a shadow laying across it, right? It's just a shadow laying across the surface of the cheek there, okay? Whereas this, in the box, you have this surface and this surface. They're intersecting planes and tonal contrast. Intersecting planes and tonal contrast. That'll make this dominant over this one to a large degree, okay? On the other hand, if you set up your values incorrectly, and this becomes much, much, much darker for some reason, it'll compete with this, and it won't look right. Okay? It's going to compete with that because if its tonal contrast is greater, at some point it will stop being subordinate and start competing with that dual effect that you get there. So that's why we kind of bring it back. I'll bring it back to the effect we were looking for to begin with. So that's the difference, and you can compound these effects. Okay, so you can add these things on. In this case, the cube, with the cube example, we have just the tonal contrast, but we also have tone and intersecting plane. So that can become something that creates something that's a bit more dominant. Okay, that's why those things work that way. We perceive them that way.